Hi folks. You know how they say a picture, what is it, a picture tells 1,000 stories, a picture's worth 1,000 words, something like that, you know, this impact that pictures have on us. Today I just thought I'd show you in a quick video a couple of pictures from this amazing book that we have, which I just kind of rediscovered this week. It's called Sights and Scenes in Scotland, and I'm afraid, as you can see, it's in a very, very poor condition. Basically, my wife June inherited it through her dad from an old man, and I think it came to our family pretty much in this state. But it dates from, well, I've been doing some research into it, and nobody actually knows the date because it's not dated. I don't know if you can see here, it says here, dedicated by special permission to Her Majesty Queen Victoria, Sights and Scenes in Scotland, being specially prepared for subscription, is not obtainable through the general booksellers, and it's by a company called Cassell and Company Limited. You can see the main page here, Sights and Scenes in Scotland, with upwards to 225 copyright illustrations. Now, I did a bit of research, and one book specialist was saying that she thought it was published in 1895. Another one said the early 1900s. Personally, I think in 1897, Queen Victoria had her Diamond Jubilee. And I personally believe this book was probably prepared for her, her Diamond Jubilee, and it was to show her Scotland and her inhabitants in Scotland and how they lived. They also this firm did ones for England and for Wales and Ireland at the same time. So I suspect it was all done for Queen Victoria's Diamond Jubilee in 1897. Anyway, there's just a couple I want to show you, just to talk about this idea that pictures tell 1,000 words or 1,000 stories. Well, there are lots of pictures in here, but I want to focus on a couple. I'm hoping that you can see them. I'm sorry about this. Anyway, here's a picture of Edinburgh from the castle. Now, if any of you have been to Edinburgh, you'll know roughly this view. It's still pretty much the same. These are the art galleries. This is the Scott Monument. Here is the train station. The train's running along here. We're standing up here on the castle looking down. This is called Carlton Hill. The only difference, really, I had a good look at this earlier, the only real difference that I'd see, this is the Bank of Scotland up on the hill on the mound. This building here nowadays is occupied by the Balmoral Hotel. If you've ever stayed in the Balmoral Hotel, you were staying in these buildings here, so that's obviously a change. And up here, not on Carlton Hill, but on the top of Waterloo Place, there was originally a jail. It was called the Carlton Jail, and that's still there. And nowadays it is the Scottish office, where the Scottish government is based, is up there. But you know, by and large, here we have all the big stores on Princes Street, and we have a busy bustling street. We have Princes Street gardens stretched out. We have art galleries, railways, greenhouses, trees, shrubs, manicured grass, etc. It's still pretty much the same. And here is another view. So I do hope that you're able to see these views. I should maybe try and zoom in a little bit on it, possibly. Would that help? Sorry, I should have done that earlier. So this is from Carlton Hill. Again, if you've been up here, this is Princes Street. If you've been to Edinburgh, you'll know this, the famous thoroughfare, Princes Street, lined with fine shops. Well, used to be. Now more and more it's going to turn into probably restaurants, hotels and such like. That's nice. And this is the old Carlton Jail. So this was quite a famous jail in its time, and it was completely taken down. And as I said, what's called the Scottish office is there, which is quite a fine building actually. Here we are looking up to the castle, and here's the old town running down the hill from the castle. Scott Monument there. But by and large, if you were standing there today, that is going to be pretty much the same. Looking up from Prince Street up to the Old Town, again, practically no difference at all. New College here, this is the Bank of Scotland, there's the spire of St Giles, Princess Street Gardens. I'll just skip these ones, if you don't mind. I wanted to show you this one. So this is, again, if you've been in Edinburgh, this is from the Grass Market, so part of the Old Town. This is where they used to execute people down here. Many people go to the Grass Market now, lots of pubs, restaurants, lovely place, castle, towers over it. And this is very recognisable. I mean, apart from, you know, sort of slightly different shop fronts, it hasn't changed at all, which is wonderful and is a testament to the way that the council primarily has looked after the city. And if you've been to the Tattoo, this is the Esplanade. This is what it was built for, the Esplanade. It wasn't there in medieval times. It was specifically built for the troops to train on, to practice marching and bands and such like. So this was built, it was actually built from the waste when they were building the city chambers. They had to excavate a lot of earth and they dumped it all here, and then they turned it into the Esplanade. So when you're here watching the Tattoo, they have big stands on either side you're seated in. This is what you're on. And that's Edinburgh Castle. Completely the same as it is today. The Great Hall, don't think that's changed much. Well, absolutely not. That's St Giles Cathedral in the Royal Mile, and it is exactly like that as you would find it today, apart from the carriages. And this one, and I think the next one, are quite personal to me. This is the Old Town, Edinburgh Old Town. It's the Royal Mile, and this is John Knox's house. So this is quite a famous, John Knox was a famous preacher, minister in Scotland who brought about the Reformation, and this was where he lived. But for those of you who knew me when I had my jewellery business, which was called Hamilton Young in Edinburgh, I had a shop right here, right opposite John Knox's house. And for those of you who are Outlander fans, the World's End pub is just down here, and also quite a lot of filming took place in two closes down here, just down here behind my shop. But this is exactly as it is now. Okay, the shops are slightly different shop fronts, quite a lot of pubs here now, restaurants, but still lots of shops. So, yep, very recognisable, lots of houses. There used to be, for those of you who want to go to the World's End, which is here, it was called the World's End because here was a huge stone gate, because that's where the city ended, and that's why it was called the World's End, because as far as the citizens of Edinburgh was concerned, the world ended there. And there was a massive stone structure called the Netherbow there, with wooden gates to pass. All traffic coming in and out of the city had to pass through that gate. That was one of the gates. It was one of the main gates. And here's the other one I was so pleased to show you. This is further down the Royal Mile. This is what's called the Canongate, and this building here is the Canongate toll booth. For many centuries, the Canongate was a separate municipal. It was separate from the city. The city was up here behind its walls, and this was the Canongate. Slightly further down here is Holyrood Palace. But again, for those of you who knew me when I owned Hamilton Young was based just there, just where that carriage is sitting, right next to the toll booth, which is the oldest building in the Royal Mile. The toll booth dates from, it says here 1567 in the book, but certainly, yeah, mid 1500s it dates from. It was where the borough of Canongate was run from, so it was like the mayor's office, if you want to call it that. But that's, yeah, I spent many years there, meeting many of you actually, if you were coming to Edinburgh. And again, for Outlander fans, Bakehouse Close is here, just through that wee arch there. Bakehouse Close, which is quite famous. That's where in the novel of Outlander novels, Jamie has his print works in Bakehouse Close. That's just where it was filmed. and many fans go there to see the location. In real life, Bakehouse Close was a busy, bustling place. Apparently had quite a few brothels in it, and but also many artisans working there. So that was Bakehouse Close. But this is the Canongate. But that, if you were to stand here today, that is almost, I would say, exactly the same. So the point I'm sort of laboriously trying to make is, because I'm now going to show you a picture from in the Highlands. So again, coming back to what I said here, I believe this book was produced in 1897. So all these pictures are dating from round about that time. And my grandfather was born in 1880. So these are the streets he would have walked around. This is what he saw in Edinburgh. But if you had gone a few hundred miles north to Lochaber, this is how people lived. Now, Lochaber is a district in Scotland. Many of you will have been to it. You might not have known you've been in Lochaber, but many of you will have been to it if you've been to Scotland. Its main town is Fort William, which again in Outlander, there was the fort there was used for a filming location, and also if you're going over to Skye, you'll pass through Lochaber, and you might go out to Mallaig. That's part of Lochaber. You might go out there and get the ferry to Skye, or you might drive the other way and go over on the bridge. So it's that part of Scotland over on the west side, and Port William is its main town, which many of you will have passed through, because it's the only way is to go through. If you go through Glencoe, for instance, you're in Lochaber and you're heading up to Fort William. So many people have been here. But I suppose what came over to me looking at this was, having looked at those images of Edinburgh, at that time called the Athens of the North, with its fine, elegant structures, broad streets, parks, bustling with people, a mighty train station which was very busy. Did they have trams then? Probably not, but they certainly had, streets with carriages and such like. And here we are in Lochaber at the same time. And this picture's taken to show this is how people live in the Highlands. Now this house, this structure, is what's called a black house. So you'll see examples today. There have been examples that have been kept carefully renovated, carefully restored, and it's wonderful to see them. I quite like seeing this picture because this shows you a bit more of what it was actually like. And this picture, I've noticed, was taken by a local photographer in Oban. So obviously somebody from Oban in those early days was out and about with a camera, taking pictures of how people lived. So, no paved roads, mud, tracks. And the black house, they would keep, this is a house where the humans lived, and also their beasts, and mostly cattle, stayed. So the cattle would have stayed in this part of the house, and the human beings would have lived in this part of the house. There would have been a wooden partition through there, but I've been in them and seen many years ago. The wooden partition, you could get through to it, and so the cattle are kept in there with all the ensuing smells of urine probably and whatever from the cattle, and the smell of the beasts themselves. But also there was a positive that they apparently kept the buildings warm, because they would emanate heat. And it was said, I have no proof of this, but somebody up there, this maybe 30 years ago or more ago, somebody who lived in a black house told me that it was said that people had quite wrinkle-free skin, and it was said that it was the effect of the urine from the cattle. The smell of that kept their skin kind of smooth but also dark. And that may be totally wrong, but I give you it just as a comment. And inside here there would be it would be an earth floor, and usually in the middle. Now they do have a chimney, what appears to be a chimney here, because what they used to have in here on the floor, there was a fire in the middle, just on the floor, and the smoke would just go up and make its way out through the roof. Now maybe in this one, in later years, they did put fireplaces in, and I do notice there's a chimney there. I have been in a black house with the fire on, and the smoke is just drifting up through the thatched roof, and it was very smoky indeed. But that is traditionally what they were like. I suspect here they have put a fireplace in. The thatch is made from grass, really, and they would redo it, I think, every year. And they would just cut grass, and it was held down. You can maybe just see here, they would put ropes over it with big stones, big boulders were used, but I can see here they're also leaning big tree trunks against it. Now, I suppose what's uppermost in my mind looking at this is, how did these people survive? But survive they did. Where did they get food? Where did they get clothes? You know, how did their normal life operate when you look at this picture? Now, I suspect that there would have been some roads up there, 1897. There certainly would be military roads, and there would be some roads, so it wouldn't all be like this. But I think this highlights this aspect of it. And if you wanted a controversial view from me, and this is controversial, is that this shows you, in a way, the clan chiefs at this time were wealthy and lived in fine big houses and castles. As you'll see if you go around Scotland, when you're going around Scotland, you know, they weren't living in houses like these. And I do think a lot of the problems from the Highlands revolved around the clan system not developing, not evolving. So here we are, 1897, well into the industrial stage, well into it. All over the Western Europe, you know, standards were improving. Okay, some of the houses that were being built, tenement houses and houses in cities, weren't that great, but they weren't living in what was a turf hut, really, tufted roof, with just the earth on the floor. What kind of sanitation they would have here, I don't know, at that time. Probably none, to be honest. They would probably have to go and collect water and whatever. So I just thought that when I looked at it, when I found the book again, and I looked through it, and I came across this one, I just thought it was very interesting. You know, pictures tell 1,000 words, 1,000 stories. And here's one story, and I'm not knocking Edinburgh for being fine. I love Edinburgh and I live in Edinburgh. I just feel that this showed a complete imbalance in society, and why did that happen, and how was it allowed to happen in a way. Anyway, I do hope you've enjoyed this little one. It just came to me suddenly when I found the book, and I thought I would just share it with you. So that's all from me, and I just, as usual, want to wish you all the very best from Scotland.